Greetings. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the celebration. I know you could be anywhere. So the fact that you're here today, sharing your time and your energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment and every single moment, you are valued, you are appreciated, and you are loved. Welcome back to part 2 of this epic series that I did with Janna. If you're watching on YouTube, this is what I look like. Got my Milwaukee Bucks shirt on, of course, Wisconsin. If you're listening on the podcast, you're not missing much. You know what I look like. So I'm going to turn the camera off here, my friends. Now, this is a transition I created in post-production. This is one that after listening through the whole entire recording of our 2.5 hours together, I saw this is a place we could pause. I didn't know that during the interview. It's hard to, or the conversation, it's hard to keep track of the time and be present. So Janna's not here with me to create this transition. We should have recorded 2 just in case. I apologize for that. But in our conversation in part 1, if you haven't listened to it, jump back, make sure you listen to it. As a refresher, we were talking about the anxiety around decisions. And we were talking about how friction creates spiritual growth. And one of the things we were talking about in that is analysis paralysis and kind of this anxiety that can come up around trying to decide which path in life to take. And so here in a moment, you're going to hear me bring up to Janna, hey, I know we wanted to talk about mortality. Let's jump into that. And so just as a reminder, one of the contexts, because you're going to hear me reference something we talked about earlier, was in part 1, which if you haven't listened to already, listen to. In part 1, we started to talk about thinking about consequences of your decisions, or if you could get it wrong, or what if you did something completely different, or what if life was different, all these different things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get out of the way here in my post-production self. And moving forward, everything you hear in this episode after this, including the outro, was live recorded with Janna. So let me get out of the way. Here we go. One of the things we had talked about that we were going to talk about was mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, does the intention lead to the conversation, or would it have just come up? Because to me, I think a big part of the anxiety around all of this comes from, do you believe on a spiritual level that you get one shot at this life, and then after that, that's it? Whether you go to heaven or hell, but like that, there is no just one shot, that's it. Or do you believe that like there's something else? You know what I mean? I think it's wrapped up in how we view death. This anxiety around, am I making the right decision?
Mm-hmm. I do believe in heaven. I'm a Christian. I went to a church when I was living in New York, First Corinthian Baptist Church. And what I loved about the pastor was that he was an NYU professor. And so a lot of his teachings was very practical, and he encouraged asking questions and questioning scripture and passage. And, and there was this concept that I got introduced to, this idea that, heaven or hell is inside of us. And if you look around, I mean, when we talk about, the last days, there are so many parts of this world that feel like it's the last days. I mean, the things that we read in the Bible, it's like, oh my God, we're living in like turmoil. I mean, and so I really do believe that, yes, I do believe that when you die, you go and you are with God and you're with your loved ones who've passed on, and you get to finally live life free of pain and, rich in all the good things. But I also believe that heaven is a place you have to tap into here on this earth internally, because we will have a million reasons to feel sorrow, to be miserable, to be fearful, to go through just some of the worst that life has to throw our way. And it really is up to us to get to a place where we feel peace and we feel calm and we can feel unconditional joy. And so that is kind of my approach. I'm not going to wait until I die to get to this place where I'm happy and I'm, experiencing joy and I'm free from pain. I'm learning how to process pain and repurpose pain, and really learning, my mom used to say, I have good days and I have great days. I don't have bad days. And that's kind of how I try to model my own life, is like, I have, the days that aren't so great, they're still good because I'm here to experience it and get to the other side. And so I do believe, and I don't know if I'm even making sense, but I do believe that there is, I do believe that we do, die and go to heaven and hell or whatever. But I think that it's really about the experience that we're living here on earth, and not waiting till it's all over to feel like you're going to get your reward. It's like, no, your reward is here. If you can just tap into it, find ways to seek it and find it and relish in it. What do you think about that?
It reminds me of the Bob Marley, what's it, something like, so if you know what life is worth, you will look for yours on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Stand up for your rights. That one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we are now in the realm of the indescribable, unanswerable. The human intellect can never describe God, ever. We can try, we can use parables, songs, but it's indescribable. So the intellect can never describe the undescribable. And so we can just kind of create stories that have enough emotional drive around it that we can like defend it. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
it's indescribable. So it's an impossible task. But I think it is that the words can create pointers that tap into the emotion that is the reality. Like that safety, that surrender, that grace, that feeling of like I could be walking in the middle of chaos and hurricanes and war and famine, and I could be impacted by war, chaos, and famine, and I would feel that feeling of being held by something that has power, that just has it all making sense and has my back. Like that's feeling that we've all felt. What words do we put to that? You know what I mean? That's kind of like what we're trying to do here.
And there is no word. There is no word.
Pointers. And I so all the pointer words that you used are awesome. And I think there's a lot of, as a marketer, I know the power that can come with getting people to believe in the story that I have created around those emotions. Because if you can get someone to believe in the story that gives them those emotions, then they are mine. I can. Do you know who Carter G. Woodson is?
I do not.
He's the founder of Black History Week, turned into Black History Month.
Oh, well, I should. That's embarrassing.
That's unfortunately our education system. Do you know the album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill?
Yep.
So he has a book called The Miseducation of the very out of date word. Is this ringing a bell?
Negro?
There it is. Yes.
Okay.
One of those words.
I have heard that, the miseducation of the Negro. Yes, yeah. But okay.
So there's this guy named Dr. Naeem Akbar. I've got to hear him speak, where he broke down that book. And it was like, where he just talks about like, if you can, the way you control people is to control their emotions and how they think. And if you can control their emotions and how they think, and therefore give them an identity, one of the lines he has is, you won't have to tell them to use the back door. they will demand you create one for them. And I remember when he broke that down, I mean, there's maybe like 500 people in the audience, and we all just went, oh, I see it now.
So break that down. Can you break
Oh,
that down for me?
which part?
That quote right there. About the back door.
Yes, I'm getting into slightly dangerous territory, and then I'm quoting a book that has to do with race, and I don't want to misquote it wrong, so I'm gonna venture here.
Okay.
But he's basically talking about how if you want it, so he's specifically talking about in here just after 1865 Emancipation Proclamation, we can no longer legally enslave people. So how do we keep people enslaved? We enslave them through their emotions and their thought patterns. So if we can create a system that corrupts people's emotions in their mind, and I can create something that then is a predictable algorithm. So it's like, if I feed you this, it will make you feel this and therefore think this. And one of the things I want you to think is that you are subservient. And hence the analogy is the back door. Subservience is the back door. So I can get you to just automatically, without me having to do anything, just systemically feel inferior thoughts and therefore think inferior thoughts. Even if there isn't an opportunity for you to take the subservient role, you will demand that one is created for you.
Wow.
That's the back door. So like, you're not even going to like go to the back door. You will ask that I give you one.
Wow.
So that was all the reaction we had. Like, fuck.
That's powerful. Wow.
And I think that these questions around mortality, I think that there's a significant amount of energy that is put into getting people to believe my particular story that gives the emotions of certainty and comfort in what's going to happen after you die. And if I can get people to believe in my story, then I just will tell them what the rules are and things they need to do to increase their chance of after death certainty.
Wow.
So I think that this idea of like, you only get one shot. And so the rules are very, very important and they are specific and I know them. And if you even just try to experiment with something else, that one experiment could mess up your whole chance of having finally being happy for infinity. I think that's just like, that's like such power to have someone trusting you with the answers to those questions.
Right.
And it's just like so many systems are built around just this absolute, I know the answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's so dangerous. And that's something that, you know, I grew up in the church heavily. And as I got older, you know, I started really, you know, distancing myself from a lot of the lessons that I learned early on. And it all came down to not about rules, but relationship. And, you know, what type of relationship do I want to have so that you know, I wasn't satisfied with, okay, if I follow all of these rules, no matter if I understand them or not, if I follow these rules, then that is what's going to get me into heaven. And it's more of like, well, as I build this own, you know, this intimate personal relationship with God, what is he saying to me specifically? What is he telling me to do specifically? How is he telling me to treat certain people specifically? And that's really when I started to feel connected. And less about checking things off of, you know, did you not do this? Did you do this? You know, there were so many rules that I had to, you know, live by. And it really became like, no, I'm not focused on the rules. I have a relationship with God, and the God that I have come to know would never, you know, not love or say not love a person of a, a different race, or would never tell me to not, accept a gay person. There were so many things that I had just been taught in church. And I'm like, that's actually not the God that I have gotten to know. And I think there is power in kind of pulling away from those rules, or a set list of things you should and should not do in order to reap your reward. And it's like, no, find out what what God is saying to you individually, specifically. And that's really how I grew and how I felt more empowered in my spirituality.
I mean, that's so amazing. And if you think of just the impact of what you just said, it's like, but if every single person discovers they have their own inner compass and direct line to infinity, that they don't need an intermediary of any kind, how will I control you?
Right.
So let me introduce a little bit of doubt here, Janna. How do you know that it's not just the devil telling you? How do you know it's God and not the devil?
I mean, let peace be my guide. And I can recall some pretty specific instances where I've been led by the devil throughout my life. Things that I've done that I'm like, oh, that was not good. That was, and I think peace is the way that that you're on the right path. Do you have inner peace about whatever it is that you're doing, or the relationship you're pursuing, or, the job that you're holding, or whatever? I don't believe that if I were, following the teachings of the devil and letting him, kind of persuade me or guide how I interact with others, I don't think that I would feel that, the peace. And it's also of like, how is it reflected in my relationships and my actions? Am I, I do believe this is, could be controversial, but I also believe that, Jesus really was here to show us how to live, and I don't think that we were supposed to worship him, really like pull the lessons that he was placed here to teach us. And so I do base a lot of how I treat others and how I live my life on these principles. And I think that is enough, loving one another, being kind to your neighbor, loving the least of these, there's so many things that Jesus taught us. It's like, this is how we should live. And so I let that be my guide. It's less about a rule book and more about, how are you treating other people? How do you feel? Do you feel peaceful when you lay your head at night? Do you have integrity in how you speak to people and how you've, just interacted with strangers? It's all of those things. So I let peace be my guide. That was a long way of saying peace.
It's such an amazing answer, because it like kind of what I'm hearing is it's like, really, in the end, like when people ask me, why did you convert to Islam? I'm like, because of a feeling. And they hate that answer. It's like, how do you know? You will feel it. And then what people try to do is be like, well, you can't trust your emotions. I hear a lot of scholars talk about that. Like, this is the age of feelings. Everybody's like, well, I feel this. And they talk so much shit about it. It's like, we have such an emphasis on the intellect that it's like, no. You have to be able to rationally, objectively, subjectively, neutral, no feeling explain it. It's like, I think you're spot on. How do you know? Because you can feel it. And the more we are able to trust our emotions and understand like what it means when you feel this way, I think that's the great unlock.
Yep. James Baldwin has a quote that I love to use, and I usually use it when it comes to just like following, I usually use it in career terms, but it so applies here. I think it's, you have to go the way your blood beats. If you don't live the only life you're given, you won't live some other life. You won't live any life at all. And I think, when it comes to my spirituality, it's going the way my blood beats.
I love that
feeling.
I love that. Okay, I have a spiritual thing that I've been meditating on that I'm going to throw your way, but let's save it for next week's episode. How does that sound?
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So, I mean, to be totally transparent with all of y'all, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up, and then Janna and I aren't going to hang up and come back out. We're going to start it again, but it gives me an opportunity to logistically put out another episode. So we're going to pause it here so we can edit this into a new one. And then we'll start it off with that. Where can folks get at you? Where can they say hello? Where can they be a part of your world? All those kind of things.
Yeah, Instagram. Janna M. Joyner is my Instagram account. Pop by, say hello. My own podcast, Forever Fun Employed podcast. I always love to hear from listeners. So if anyone listens and they, it resonates, shoot me a line on Instagram.
Wonderful. If y'all are interested in the storytelling community we're putting together over here, tomerl.me/DCM invite. Would love to have you be a part of our storytelling experiences. Janna, this was such vulnerable, spiritual, on the I feel like the edge. These are the kind of concepts that I rarely talk about outside of my journal. So
yeah, I never get a chance to talk about this in the real world. So thank you.
Yes, this is amazing. So we'll pause here and we'll head to the next episode. For those of you, make sure you tune in next week. And as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomerl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.